All right, Nick Koumalatsos, you are here to teach me why the Marine Raider, the Marine Recon, is a bigger badass than the Navy SEAL, than the Green Beret. In truth, what I really want to know, where I want to start, Nick, is what makes, and let's focus on the Marine Raider, what makes the Marine Raider unique? I think at least in their original conception, each of these special operator units had a defined purpose. The Navy SEALs were somewhat tailored to being an amphibious landing organization. The Green Beret was deep behind enemy lines, training up allied forces. What is it that is unique or special about the Marine Raider?
So, you look at the great opening, right? Like you just laid it out, like what the Navy SEALs are really good at, what the Army's doing. You look at the Navy SEALs now; they are really, really focused on direct action. Very, very good at direct action. For instance, when we were overseas, they got thrown into doing foreign internal defense with us in Afghanistan. Hated it, and to be honest, they weren't really trained for it. They just weren't built for it, like the Army is, right? Like you look at a Green Beret, their foreign internal defense is one of their core tasks. Now you look at Marine Raiders. I would say that we are kind of the jack of all trades with special operations. We are really focused along, like we do FID very well. We worked very well in Afghanistan doing FID, doing village stability operations. We also had components doing very, very good in direct action, which is where our force recon roots of MARSOC came from. But then we also have this very core ability of amphibious operations and employment. So if you look at, I would like to think that the Marine Raider took a page from the original Raiders in World War II, as well as what we've done in 10 years or plus years of combat with reconnaissance units. The whole, me being a former recon Marine as well, we prided ourselves in being that jack of all trades, being able to do whatever it needed to be done for that particular mission. And I think that I feel like that came over to MARSOC initially. Some of the senior leaders that were in Force Recon over at MARSOC wanted the Marine Raiders to be a DA platoon, a direct action platoon. They only wanted to do fly in, shoot guns, that's the mission, and then we leave. And it's like, well, we already have guys that, the government, the DOD was like, we already have guys that do that in special operations. We need something more. And what we've done very well is just that, is be that jack of all trades, and even more so in the some of the special realms of special operations. They've just really performed well. And I say they's because I'm long gone and I'm an old guy now, and there's guys doing it right now down the road that are just absolutely some of the highest level of professionals that are operating. Sometimes I wish I was still there doing it because it sounds fun, but nonetheless.
So I want to deal with definitions. I want to talk about MARSOC. I want you to treat me like a 5-year-old who knows nothing. I want to talk about the history of Marine Raiders and Marine reconnaissance. But first, it sounds to me, Nick, I'm a big sports fan. And, basketball has gone over this huge evolution of the last, decade to 20 years. And it's evolved from having defined positions, guys with specialty skills, into everyone on the court has to be a jack of all trades. The day of a point guard and a center are starting to meld until everyone is a wing, right? Everyone can handle the ball, everyone can shoot, and everyone can switch on defense. From the outside, it sort of feels like the special operations community, though, is headed towards that jack of all trades, where the SEALs are doing things completely removed from water, where Green Berets are obviously all throughout Afghanistan and Iraq, dealing in direct action, and you guys are on the scene, Marine Raiders. Is that fair? Is it everyone is sort of becoming a wing in basketball? Is everyone becoming a jack of all trades?
I think you got to look at the battlefield, right? Like we train and equip and operate based off of what the need of our country is and what the way the battlefield's laying out, right? We adapt to the changing environment. That's essentially, that's like one of the core foundations of what a special operator is, right? So we adapt to those environments, even down to the way we look, the clothes that we use, the weapons that we use. So I say, yeah, I think that as battlefields change, as mission sets change, you're going to see SOCOM adapt to those things, and it's going to go down to it's going to make its way down to the team level. Now you might have some rubbing of the ways of doing things. You know, there's always the old guy that says, well, that's not the way we did it in my day. Well, things change, and you've got to adapt. But that's part of being special operations, is being able to adapt. And I think that you will see in the coming future, especially with cyber and things going on, you will see special operations adapt to, and all those teams kind of have to pick up some areas that they're not necessarily their core task or what it used to be 20 years ago.
Okay, so let's deal with definitions, and I think as part of definitions, we'll probably have to get into some history. So people are familiar with Green Berets. People are familiar colloquially, they know the story.
Thank you, John Wayne.
Exactly. They're familiar with Navy SEALs. Thank you, Charlie Sheen, or whatever it may be. Marine Raiders aren't as well known. MARSOC's not as well known. And that's because it's at the same time old and new. So tell us a little bit, like, what is MARSOC?
MARSOC is Marine Special Operations, essentially. It falls under, I made a video that went viral, years ago, talking about what's the difference between a Force Recon Marine and a Marine Raider. And basically the MARSOC falls under U.S. SOCOM, but we've got a stepdad that is still the Marine Corps. So we still fall under the Marine Corps administratively. So we have to answer to two fathers, which is always super fun when you're there. But that's what it is. We have, just like we have a regiment, we have companies, and then those companies are broken down into teams.
All right, so MARSOC's under SOCOM. I saw your video, by the way, and people should know Nick was a Marine Raider and also Marine Reconnaissance. So you were Force Recon, which is under the Marine Corps'
the Marine Corps
oversight instead of
I would
SOCOM.
say that the best way to explain, what Recon is, and when I came up, Recon was the top. Like that's if you made it to Force Recon, that was the top of the Marine Corps. What I could say is you could say that they're the special operations capable unit for the Marine Corps, for the MEFs, for the MUs, Marine Expeditionary Force. When you see a big military, a big Marine Corps unit, it is their special operations unit is that reconnaissance element. They're the ones that can jump in, they can dive in, they can take small craft in, they can, they can do the DA, they can take helicopters and fast rope and all the cool guy stuff that Navy SEAL has been making movies forever. They have those capabilities and have been doing it for years, decades.
And MARSOC then is under SOCOM along with Special Forces, Green Berets, and Navy SEAls. Yeah. And MARSOC, by the way, is also Marine Raiders. Same thing. Same
it's
organization.
Just what you call a Green Beret, what you call a Navy SEAL, is what you call a Marine Raider.
So give me the history, because I know the Marines didn't want to play in the sandbox of SOCOM. They didn't. We're all special. We're all special.
I wouldn't say that the Marines didn't want to play in the sandbox. I would say that there were some career staff officers that didn't want to play in the sandbox, same sandbox, because like you said, there's no special within the special. The fact that you have an Eagle, Globe, and Anchor and you earn the title Marine, that's as good as it gets. There's no better than that. It was funny, in the transition of becoming Marine Raiders, we'd have these guys come down from Quantico, and they'd be like, remember, you're not special. And we'd always be like, but isn't special in the name of the unit? Isn't that? But I mean, I guess that's what you get with, essential politicians,
So, but the Marines, because they saw the entire Marine Corps as special, didn't want to dedicate a special unit. And I've seen your video. I believe I'm getting this correct. To SOCOM, didn't want to single it out. But that changed when? Was it about 2010, 2007? When did the Marine Raiders become a thing?
2006. They took. Actually, we had our first shot when U.S. SOCOM stood up, and then the Marine Corps said no thanks, and they came up with Marine Expeditionary Units and Special Operations Capable MUSOC. Marine Expeditionary Unit, Special Operations Capable, which they have the fast teams. The thing that happened in Bosnia was it '98. They made a movie about it. Owen Wilson played the movie. That was a MUSOC that went out there and did that. In history, there's been some things that the Marine Corps has responded to, like, in a special operations capable way. But yeah, finally, actually it was in 2001, I believe, Donald Rumsfeld decided, he said, I want to try out a Marine Corps special operations unit, and they created Det 1 and a bunch of, and it was a collaboration of some force recon, you want to talk about some of the names, and I'm not going to name drop here, but some of the most amazing men in the Marine Corps went to that unit. Guys that I looked up to as a young recon Marine, just the most guys that they should make movies and write books about. And they got a hosh-posh of these operators and put this unit together, and then operated as Det 1. If you look at the history, that falls under there. And I think they operated for about 3 or 4 years, did exceptionally well, and that laid the groundwork for MARSOC to stand up. So in 2006, they took 1st Force Reconnaissance Unit and 2nd Force Reconnaissance Unit, and then a FID branch that was called Foreign Military Training Unit, and made that 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Marine Special Operations Battalions, which are now Raider Battalions. We didn't have the name quite yet, but in 2006, those units rolled up, which kind of sucked for the Marine Corps because we gutted their force recon capability. So all these senior level force recon Marines became now part of SOCOM, and the Marine Corps had to rebuild kind of from the bottom up their force recon capability, which they have to date. They have done that.
So let me back up, and then I'll catch us back up. So let me ask you this, and I'll do some name dropping only because it advances the conversation. So a friend of mine is Joey Jones, who was a Marine bomb tech, and he and I were hanging out this past weekend, and Joey said the same thing you said. There's no special within the special. So why is it that's a mentality of the Marines?
I would say he's pretty special.
Joey is special. Yes.
Yeah, I would say he's pretty special, but go ahead.
But why is that a Marine mentality versus someone in the Army or the Air Force or the Navy? Why is that the culture of the Marines?
I think that I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think that there's pros and cons to that mentality, right? And I was talking about this on another podcast. When you look at the Marine Corps as a whole, like me as a young man coming in the Marine Corps, that's what drew me to the Marine Corps, was this idea that you were something bigger than yourself. And then you go to Marine Corps, everybody knows that at the entry level of the military, the Marine Corps recruit training is the hardest, 3 months that you'll do, right? The Air Force, they get the Army and Air Force get weekends off. You can take your cell phones. Marine Corps is very, very, recruit training is very different. They strip you away, they break you down. And you really, you speak in the third person for 3 months. It's really about making you not special. And it's the reason why that is not, stripping away your individuality, and everything goes to the team. Everything goes to your platoon, your squad. It's not about you. It's about you as a group. That's everything. That's all that matters. And they're getting young men. How else do you get young men to, when bullets are flying at you, you teach a bunch of 18-year-olds to run into bullets, run towards them. That's the fact that you can train human beings to do that mentally is amazing. And the Marine Corps is at the entry level, the Marine Corps does it better than anyone. So I think that's one of the purposes. You're not special. You're not a singular individual out of the squad. It's all about your team. It's all about the platoon. That's what matters most. So at its heart,
transition?
I think that
is that a hard transition for you? You know, because at the point where you become Force Recon and then you go Marine Raider, now you're embracing more individuality. I know you're still dedicated to the team, but as you just mentioned, you're tailoring it to your environment. I know I've seen you talk about this. Now it's beards, you know, and longer hair. So is it kind of like a hard transition from the initial Marine Corps culture into the MARSOC culture?
Not for me. You got to look, even in the reconnaissance culture, you're really taught team, like really, really big team. There's not a real big individuality in the reconnaissance community other than maybe just personalities, just ego. You know, it might be a little big. Mm-hmm. But when it came to there were some, I'll be honest, and people will hate me for saying this, but there are some people that did not transition well from the regular Marine Corps, conventional Marine Corps, reconnaissance units to special operations. Because there is a component, for instance, in selection, you're basically graded and selected completely on an individual level. Mm-hmm. Even when you're doing team things, it's really not about the team. It's about how you're doing in your position as an individual. So you're right. So there is a component of transition that some people did not make well at the time. I did embrace that. I was fortunate enough in the reconnaissance community to do some things on some of my deployments that kind of set me up for success within special operations, and having the understanding of what kind of work works and changes the battlefield versus what doesn't. So me personally did, but absolutely there's people that did not make that change very well.
How many Marine Raiders are there? How many guys are in MARSOC?
I can't speak to that. I mean, whatever's public, I don't know. Small.
Is it bigger than? Are there more or less than Berets and SEALs?
I would say that we're probably the smallest. We're the smallest branch of special operations. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so how long were you in the Marine Corps?
I was in from 2000 till November of 2012.
Okay, and then of that, when did you join Force Recon?
2003, and I took selection.
Okay, and then from that,
2007.
In what year?
So I was with second. Okay. I went to Second Force, then Third Recon. Was supposed to go back to Second Force at Camp Lejeune, and that's in 2006. They turned over. I came back from Iraq, and then with my recon platoon, got orders back, but it was 2nd Marine Raider or 2nd Marine Special Operations Battalion. Took selection, which was funny. I was like, I'm a staff NCO. I've been here for this long. I got to go through select. How many times do I got to prove myself? So I went through selection again for MARSOC, which I loved, and I absolutely believe that once I went through, and I actually ended up being cadre before I got out, I was like, this is amazing, and an amazing selection process. There was actually young recon Marines that did not get selected. They truly have a great product and know exactly what they're doing and to pull people out of there. And so I went through selection again in 2007, and then ran the rest of my career until 2012.
So tell me about selection process. What's so amazing about it? What are they looking for to find a Marine Raider?
Oh man, I'm trying to answer these as public as possible without.
Oh really? Am I asking you questions that they don't want the answers to public?
No, I won't say anything. They're looking for somebody who can think. They're looking for somebody who can make decisions. You got to look at it this way. As a special operator in SOCOM across the board, you might be you as an individual, this is the reason why it's so important. You as an individual might be put in a situation to where your decision could create a national conflict. Like one person could make a decision in a village with a village elder or something else going on, that could and will, most of their stuff lands on POTUS desk, could cause a national incident. You think it's probably important that individual can think on their feet, understand the rules of engagement, the Geneva Convention, and make a decision that's in the best interest of our country and their teammates there at the same time, and potentially local individuals there as well. It's pretty big shoes to fill.
So intelligence. So
it's not all about
judgment.
And right. So you think most people think they see special operations and they just think hammer all the time. They look at a Navy SEAL, Green Beret, or Marine Raider, and they're like these big muscle guys, and they're just like, they just go around and smash shit. And the reality is, it's much more the scalpel is much more what's being used than a hammer. Do we have the capability to use the hammer? Do we sometimes like being the hammer? Yes. But the real work comes in with the scalpel. And that's what you need. You need somebody who can operate a scalpel just as well as they can operate a hammer.
So here's a name I told you I would, just to advance the conversation. I've gotten to know a little bit former Green Beret Scott Mann, and I was having a similar conversation with him about this. And I said, what are you looking for? Like, what do you look for in special forces? He said, entrepreneurs. I want guys who are entrepreneurs, who can build something from the ground up. Here's the question, and I'll go back to yours. You're looking for somebody with intelligence and judgment who can think on their feet. How do you vet for that? Like, what is the selection criteria? What is the hell week for weeding out the guys who have bad judgment and aren't making good calls on the fly?
So I'm glad you brought up Hell Week, right? You look at something, and I'll use a civilian version. So a friend of mine runs a project for men. It's actually called The Project, the Modern Day Night Project. 75-hour experience for entrepreneurs and people that are not living to their potential as a man. So they take this military component. They've got military guys on the team. They take this military component, they put them in there. So what they do is, just like Hell Week, they wear them out physically and mentally. They just break them down to where they are exhausted, they're passing out, they've got nothing left in them. They're physically done. Now it's just about, do they have the mental capacity to continue to go forward, even though they physically can't lift the log up, they can't pick the boat up anymore, they're just smoked. But will they quit, or will they just, crumble and whatever? And then that's when the work begins. Once they haven't slept in 48 hours, once they're physically exhausted and they literally couldn't do a 20-pound dumbbell curl, that's when they start to do the brain work. So they put these guys through that whole experience, and then the real work begins on getting vulnerable, solving mental problems. So the same thing happens within a selection process through Hell Week or through whatever. You wear these guys down to where there's nothing left, and then you put them in mentally fatiguing positions and have them make decisions. What happens then? How do they carry themselves? Do they crumble? Do they go inward, or do they have their wits about them and they can still operate on another intellectual level?
So is there let's go through that selection and that Hell Week concept before we even get to the mental test of it. Mm-hmm. And I know you've talked about this. Like, I know there are physical standards to meeting the requirements or surviving the test of MARSOC selection. Have you ever found, and I've always wondered this, and I've met a lot of guys who are who are special operators. Is there a physical profile? Because there are guys all over the map. I mean, I don't know that there's guys as skinny as I am. I don't know if there's guys as skinny as I am in any of those things, but like what
I'll tell you
physically?
This. Some of the most amazing guys I've seen are literally 5'4", 125 pounds.
Really?
I've been passed. We're carrying the same weight. I'm 225, 6 foot. We're carrying the same amount of weight, and I've watched one of my buddies literally pass me walking up a mountain.
Carrying the same amount of weight.
Carrying the same amount of weight. So there's this perception that everybody's like Commando at Arnold Schwarzenegger. At least it was when I was a kid, right? It's like everybody every, Navy SEAL, Green Beret, whoever that is in special operations looks like Commando or Sylvester Stallone. And that's simply not the case. I've seen guys that look like like a dad, a 1985 dad with New Balance white shoes and high crew socks and a polo and a braided belt. Absolutely crush the high school athlete quarterback. I cannot tell you how many in shape, physically specimen guys show up, and it's almost like as soon as you see them, you're like, that guy's going to quit.
Okay, but is that about quit? Is that about intestinal fortitude? Because I buy that on like you never know who's going to quit thing. I do buy that. You never know who's got it.
Actually, if you do the job long enough, you get in. When they walk in, it's funny. When you get a group in, it doesn't take long. I mean, very quickly do you figure out who's got it in them and who doesn't.
Oh, you got to tell me how. You got to tell me, how do you figure that out?
It's hard to say. It's almost like a look, like a feeling, like they're weird to say, but the aura they put off, the way their eyes, if they have that look. But I cannot tell you how many people who, when you look at them, you go, oh, that's a physical specimen. He's going to crush that, and they'll be the first out the door. As soon as it gets hard, they just go inward and fall apart.
I had one of my kids' soccer coaches one time says, I can tell how a kid walks onto the field during a tryout, whether or not he's going to be good or not. Like just how he walks out onto the field. I don't know if that's true or not, but
no, absolutely, because it's experience. We run these events and we run these courses, even with civilians now, right? We put these guys. I mean, you got to look at like the go-rut culture. You got to look at all these different things that are military based, but civilians do. It's the same thing. You get a crew in, and you immediately know. There's just if you have experience in that field, it's almost like a feeling, like a spider sense. You look at them and you go, and you could be wrong, but at the end of the day, like experience says a lot. You look at them and you go, I don't think that one's going to make it.
I mean, I'm tempted to say I want to think it's the guy who walks in all cocky and brags, but I'm sure some of those guys are tough too. Like I just can't imagine. I can't fit the profile.
Too,
yeah. What's the attrition rate? Like, what is the failure rate on the selection process?
It's well over 50%. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Back in the day, so I know with our unit, because you have multiple you have to go through like pre-selection, right? And you'll lose guys there, and then you get selected, and then you'll lose a ton of guys at selection, and then you got to go through your actual Q course or ITC or whatever, right? Which is a very long process. Up to a year or more, and then there's certain things. I mean, the attrition rate once you get into the course is very low, but there's certain things. There's still wickets and still phase lines that you have to hit and pass or fail items that you have to pass. But typically, if you get selected, you're pretty good as long as you don't make a big mistake or do something dumb. Back in the day when I went through amphibious reconnaissance school at Fort Story, Virginia, which is no longer there. I showed up with 72 people, and we graduated 14.
Really?
Day one, 72. Graduation day was 14.
And by the way, is that attrition like in our minds? Like as we sort of envision that, we figure because we've seen and read about it, it's like somebody ringing the bell because they have that quit in them. But we're not just talking about physically or emotionally quitting. We're also talking about failing too, right? Like that judgment test, that intelligence test. We're talking about failing.
So like absolutely. There is a failing component. You have to maintain, everything's graded. You have to maintain an 80% or above. And if you literally fail a test, like a written test or some sort of operation that you're supposed to do, if the grading criteria, even down to like land navigation, there's a score on that. And if you get below an 80 or your average is below an 80 or you get below an 80 on a test, then you're out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not to mention injury. Like it's a dangerous job. Like doing all the things that you're doing, I can't tell you how many rolled ankles, broken shoulders, broken bones, getting an infection, getting staph, getting, bit by a spider. Now you've got a hole in your body somewhere. Things happen.
All right. And then, so, Nick, you make it, you're Force Recon. You spent, I think I added it up, 3 or 4 years as a Marine Recon. And then you were also another good 5 years as a Marine Raider.
Yep.
What does it give to the extent that you can? And I understand I'm going to ask a question that you probably can't answer, or you're going to have to search for a way to answer it. What kind of mission does a Marine Raider typically get sent on?
So that is trying to put it back in the box. I mean, in my day, obviously I heavily operated in Afghanistan. And we were, in all intensive purposes, doing what's called FID, Foreign Internal Defense. We were operating as a small team going into a village, establishing a security force, a local security force, for them to be security in their own villages. For instance, my last deployment, we had 14 actual raiders and enablers, and which is people that are attached to the team, like your friend and EOD, and some special signals intelligence type stuff, and some other people. But we had a small group of us, and we had 314 man local security force that we trained, equipped, and operated with. Majority of which all on motorcycles. Which, if you Google the old MARSOC motorcycle gangs on Google, a bunch of pictures and articles will come up, and that was our generation. But we were an Afghan motorcycle gang. It was 14 of us and 314 of them. So wild. So it was one of the highlights of my life, Will, is, riding off the back of a CH-47 on a motorcycle with a bunch of dudes and guns. I mean, I don't think that,
it sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah. Watching 80s movies as a kid growing up, and then getting to do that in real life. It was definitely a tick on, a high mark on my life. But honestly, when it comes to your daily life or a mission, it really goes back to the beginning of our conversation, what the nation needs and what the countries that we're operating in, what they need, what the current mission is there. And a lot of it starts out with FID. A lot of it starts out with Foreign Internal Defense, and then it kind of branches off from there. So you could be doing FID, and the next thing you know, you are doing direct action. Or you are doing an amphibious operation. You know what I mean? But it really comes down to, you got to think at the core of special operations, it's about working with host nations. So you get into an area, you're trying to shape a battle, you're doing asymmetrical warfare, you're shaping a battle space to make it better, in conjunction with I'm going to say it, but the goals of the State Department, whatever the hell those could be at the time, based on politics. But then once you get in there and you're working with your host nation, there might be something that needs to be done. And that's why it's really great that Marine Raiders are so versatile, because they can very quickly pivot to do all these other operations right there in the country.
One more thing I'd love for you to clarify for me. And by the way, anybody listening or watching should go check out Nick's video on YouTube. It did go viral. I did watch it. You actually even have a whiteboard where you kind of lay out how this all breaks down under SOCOM and under the Marine Corps.
Will, you know what? One mistake I made there that people called me out on?
What?
I think I totally left out the Air Force.
No, you didn't. You had Air Force under SOCOM. Yeah,
I did?
No, you had had SEALs, Special Forces, Air Force. I think you did. Definitely.
Oh, okay.
Which I have left it out in this conversation. I'm wearing an Air Force shirt right now, but I've left it out because
I like all the PJs and all the CCT guys. I love you guys too.
So my point is, you have this great understanding though of the hierarchy, and I think that I want to, and I'm not sure it's appropriate for me to create this sort of pyramid and to try to understand how it is. And it may not work that way, but colloquially there's I think that people talk about tier 1, tier 2, I do think, and tell me if I'm wrong, there's something above SOCOM, right? Isn't there JSOC where essentially, would it be SEAL Team 6 or DevGru and then Delta are in there? Does the Marine Raiders have, am I right? Is there another tier higher, and do the Marines have a representative?
I have read books that there is. I've read books and seen movies that there is.
For the Marines?
No. In general.
Okay.
What you just said, I've read books that there are other units out there, but I don't know anything about that.
So cagey. You're so cagey. I can't tell if you're being honest or not. All right. So Nick, I appreciate this. It sounds to me like if I'm asking for, if I were a young man and I was thinking about, hey, I would like to think that I could survive the selection criteria for some special operations, whether or not it's in Navy or in the Marines or in the Army, and I was talking to you, your sales pitch to me on why it should be the Marine Raiders is
this is what
versatility.
This is what I tell young people right here is there's a lot of things that you don't have control over, right? Obviously, you're going into an unknown, which I think is a beautiful thing, right? The whole process to me is just absolutely beautiful. So as I'm looking at this, I go, okay, any operation, and I get kids to think about it this way. This is the way that you have to think as a special operator. You have to be trained for everything. You have to be prepared for everything. All right. But how do we handle the unknown? Okay. Well, what we do is we control what we know. Well, I know I need to be extremely physically fit, right? I know I need to be able to walk with a lot of weight on my back and have my feet conditioned to that. So I'm not getting blisters and blah, 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 blah. I know I need to be able to execute this many. They know what the basic standards are. All right. So what I tell people is remove anytime that I've ever done anything, if it's climbing a mountain, well, I live at sea level. So one of the things that I can do is sleep in a chamber. So I slept, I put a tent. My wife loved it. I put a tent over our bed and I slept at 14,000 feet for 3 weeks. So that's one variable that I could remove. And when I went and summited, guess what? Hypoxia was not, altitude sickness was the one thing that I didn't have any issue with. So you find the variables that you can mitigate. You mitigate all of those risks, whatever the ones that you know. Find what you know and mitigate all of them. And now all you have to deal with the unknown. Now you only have to focus on what is going to be thrown at me because I'm physically fit, so I'm not going to get smoked. I'm going to get smoked, but I can handle it. I always tell people, imagine on your best day you can get a 300. Well, then you really need to get a 400. So on your worst day, you get a 300.
This is your physical fitness test,
and you need
right?
Physical fitness test, right? And just or anything, right? So if the level that you need to be at is a 300 on your best, and all you can get is a 300 on your best, well, then that means at your worst, you're going to get a 200. Well, maybe a 250 is the line. So that means that you need to be at a 400. So when you're at your worst, because you will be there, you're still in range. So it's about going through any selection process, going through anything, being prepared for anything is about mitigating as much risk as possible. So controlling the known. The rest you just have to handle. And that's where right there is exactly where the selection process comes into play, because that's when you find out who can handle the unknown in that environment.
And I saw in your video you said you can't sign a contract off the street to go into Marine Raider selection. You can sign a contract with the Marine Corps to go into reconnaissance, and then you spend some years in that. I think you said 3 years or so, and then maybe you could get into selection for Marine Raider at that point.
If you apply, yeah.
So and your pitch for why Marine Raiders, by the way, of the special operators, your pitch for why the Marine Raiders, what I've gathered today would be, A, you're already a Marine, which makes you somewhat special, even though you're not, nobody's special, and B, special. Versatility.
Yeah, I think that it is a unique unit. I wouldn't change. I honestly, if I going back and look, I get that question all the time. Would you join the SEALs? Would you do the Green Berets? I honestly wouldn't change anything. The community that I had, the jobs that I did, I really personally, I really enjoyed. It's very different from the other branches. The culture is very different. That culture very much just at the time matched up with who I was and who I wanted to be. So it's something that you have to look at. And I get the same question, should I go officer or enlisted? It's about what you want to do in your daily life. Do you want to do the thing, or you want to lead people doing the thing? So it depends on, I like with young guys that talk to me and go, hey, I want to do this. What should I do? Well, tell me what your idea day looks like. What are you doing? Because a lot of guys are like, well, I want to go be an officer. And they go, okay, tell me what your day looks like. And they tell me, I'm like, well, you're not going to do any of that. So you should probably go enlist and work your way up. Another thing is that you're right. They can't come in straight off the street and go be a Marine Raider. I personally like this, and I don't want anybody to yell at me because it's not everybody. But when the Army created the X-ray program, which is the program that you can come off the street, get a contract, and go straight to basically go to boot camp, and then go to special forces selection, and then you're straight into the Q course, and you're a Green Beret after that. They had a lot of maturity problems. Because now you got a guy that's 20 years old, 21 years old, that's in a soft unit. They don't have the life experience to handle some of those decision-making processes in the field. Like, that's a very difficult thing to deal with, and as you know, there's a big difference in a 21-year-old, and I'm speaking generally, right? I'm not speaking, there's plenty of 21-year-olds out there that are probably, very mature and can handle this, and they do, right? And this is the reason why selection process is so well. But even in the reconnaissance community, when we went to recon contracts, which became a thing when I was in, that hasn't always been a thing. When I was I was a staff NCO when they opened that door, we saw the same thing. We saw a lot of maturity issues with guys who were very good, but that ego got to them, right? And they just lacked a little bit of the maturity and honestly just life experience. So now they're putting these big positions, these big roles, but they weren't there yet. And you know what happens? Typically they get humbled, they get put in their place. They get knocked down a few notches, which even I was knocked down a few notches in my time, and and then you move on. But that's the reason why I prefer that the Marines do it the way they do it. They give these guys some time in the military. Not to mention they give them times in the conventional forces to where they realize how good they have it at MARSOC. So they see the grass is a little bit greener on the other side. So they have that relationship with that perspective.
Well, I've read some about your story, so I know some of what you're talking about when you say you've got knocked down from time to time. But listen, man, I really appreciate you hopping on. I've been very curious about this. I'm enjoying talking to all of you guys in the special operator community of the various branches, and I think that probably yours is the least well known. So people should learn more about the Raiders and reconnaissance, for that matter.
Well, I'm definitely
and what you guys do.
I'm definitely doing my part. It's funny. I've got kids. I've got kids now. My business partner and I, because years ago we ironically got into training, like building prep guides for young men going in the military, and now over the years we've actually had gone from high school, joined the Marine Corps, and made it into MARSOC. Since we've been out, it's been 10 years. And now they are Raiders that they've literally followed us since high school, and we've tracked them all the way through high school, through recruit training, 3 years in the Marine Corps, and then took selection, and now they're young Raiders at the unit, which I think is cool. So
that's awesome. Now you guys just need to get some movies made, right?
We just got to make a Marine Raider movie. That's all we.
That's right. Right. All right. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah. Thank you, Will.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain Podcast for full episodes right now.